For today's Midweek Masterpiece, we're going to be making quilt collages inspired by the Quiltmakers of Gee's Bend, Alabama, where for more than 100 years, women have been creating some of the most beautiful and unique and innovative quilt designs in the world. Their quilts are so famous, they've even been shown in museums and galleries across the globe. Stay tuned and I'll show you exactly what you need to create your own quilt collage, and I'll walk you through it step by step. Let's get creating. Hi everyone! Welcome to our virtual studio where we believe art is for everyone. My name's Annie and I'm the Program Director of Arts for Life at Mission Children's Hospital. Today on our Midweek Masterpiece, we're going to be making quilt collages inspired by the Quiltmakers of Gee's Bend. Gee's Bend is a teeny tiny little community in Alabama, right on the Alabama River. It's surrounded on three sides by the river, so it's a little bit hard to get to and very isolated. Right now, only about 300 people live there. And most of the people that live there are the relatives of slaves who were brought there in the early 1800s to work on a cotton farm. More than 100 years ago, women in this community started making quilts because they were cold. They didn't have blankets, and usually their houses didn't have any heat at all, so it got pretty chilly in the winter. They didn't have very much, and so they started piecing together what little fabric that they did have, which was old clothes or feed sacks or aprons or dresses that their kids had grown out of, and they started piecing these together into beautiful quilts. After a while, quilt making really became a tradition in this community, and mothers and grandmothers passed along these traditions to their daughters and granddaughters. And that's how they all learned. They didn't have a teacher to teach them. They didn't meet their teacher in the hospital. They didn't talk to him over the computer like you and I are now. They just learned from each other. And because of that, their designs were so unique. No one had ever seen any quilts like these before. And they were so beautiful. And because their relatives who had come over 100 years or more before were from Africa, it's really thought to believe that a lot of their patterns were inspired by African textiles, which are often really bright and full of pattern. Today we're going to make our own quilt collage out of paper inspired by the fabric quilts of Gee's Bend. I'm going to turn my camera around and show you all the materials that you're going to need, and then I'll show you step by step how to make one. So for this project, you're going to need several different materials. The most important is paper. You're going to need a few different kinds of paper. First, you need a thick piece of paper. I'm using a white piece of paper, but you can really use whatever color you want. We're going to end up covering it completely, so it doesn't really matter. You could even use the side of a cereal box or the back of a pad if you want to. The other kind of paper that you're really going to need are just some brightly colored paper. I had some origami paper and some paper strips left over from a different project. You might also want to use some magazine papers. Here are some examples of just patterns and pictures that I liked that I cut out of magazines. Just make sure if you go to cut a magazine that you ask a parent or an adult if it's okay. And then the third category of papers is really the most important for this project, because these are papers that really say something about you. So these are all papers that I've collected. Some of them are cards or old artwork or things like that I had around the house that really mean something to me, that are special. So this is my stack. But I invite you to go treasure hunting around your house and see if you can find things that are 2D, that means they're flat, that you can incorporate into your collage. And if you need help with that, you can always ask a parent or a nurse. If you're in the hospital, you can look around your hospital room for any kind of paper, anything. It could be artwork you created, just anything that says something about you. Those are the most important elements of this kind of collage. I also want to show you a few different examples of actual quilts that the Gee's Bend Quiltmakers made. The first one And they made all kinds of different quilts, but these are just a few examples. This is a pattern called Lazy Gal. As you can see, it's characterized by long strips of fabric which they sewed or pieced together. Another example, and these are actual, like these pictures are actually pictures of quilts that Gee's Bend quilters made. This is another common pattern that they used. And these are some examples of a geometric pattern. These are kind of classic examples, and these are some variations. Aren't they beautiful? I know these pictures are kind of small, but if you search on the internet, if you search for the Gee's Bend Quiltmakers, you can find all kinds of examples of them. It was really hard for me to choose which ones to show you today. Here's another example of a pattern that they used a bunch called Housetop. And this is actually my favorite. And so it's what I'm going to base my collage on today. These are some examples of classic housetop patterns, and these are some variations. So today I'm going to walk you through doing a housetop pattern, but if one of the other designs speaks to you, by all means, please do one like that. For my housetop design, I found this little purple square in my origami paper stash, and I thought it just really should be the center of my design. So I'm going to start with that. I'm going to use my glue stick, and I'm going to rub a generous amount of glue on my square, just like this. And then I'm not going to worry too much about it being right in the middle, because it doesn't really matter. But I'm going to stick it right there. Then I'm going to take some different strips of paper. This is some strips of wrapping paper that I've used. I picked it out because I love the pattern, and it has a good memory for me, so I really wanted to put it in my collage. I'm just going to arrange these strips. This is paper that I made for a different project that I had left over. I'm not going to glue anything down yet, and actually I'm going to encourage you to go ahead and lay out your collage before you glue anything down. And that's sort of in the spirit of the Gee's Bend quilters, who often quilted in this style called My Way. So what they would do was they would often start with an idea in mind. So they might say, oh, I really like this housetop pattern, I'm going to start there. And as they kept working, they just decided to take it in a different direction. And they might just make up the rest. It might not be a traditional housetop pattern. It is whatever they want it to be. So that's what I want you to think about here, is ways that you can add elements, maybe not stick right to the plan, make it your own. I have all these different papers that I really like. Some of them are magazine, some of them are from different projects. I'm just going to keep adding them a little bit at a time, trying to cover up all the white spaces. Just like this. Here's a doodle that I made that I liked. It wasn't really a piece of artwork. I just really liked it, wanted to include it. So here my strategy is just to cover all the white space how I can. That's almost there, isn't it? I have a couple little corners. Here's one here that I'm going to add. And let's see, I'm going to take a little bit more of this paper to fill in this corner down here, like that. Okay, I'm not going to glue it all down because I want to save some time here. But the next thing you would do is take yours off piece by piece and glue it back on. Before we finish up, I just want to show you a couple more examples of other kinds of collages you could do inspired by the different Gee's Bend designs we talked about. Here's an example that I made of the Lazy Gal pattern. Remember this one? I just used some magazine paper and some different colored papers for that one. And then this one was created, it was inspired by the geometric pattern. Remember this one? This one was created by my daughter Edie. You probably can't tell, but these are actually scoops of ice cream. She also used some little squares and rectangles of magazine paper. She got all that laid down and then she said, I really want to use markers. And I said, do it your way. And so she did. She took markers and she drew some different patterns in between. She did a really nice job. And I'm just going to show you one last time an example of the the housetop pattern that I created. So that was my example. And just as a reminder, here's what the housetop pattern looked like. So again, do it your way. You can do it however you want to. If you arrange all your pieces and you decide they need to be a different way, then go for it. It's all about doing it your way, being inspired by the incredible quilt makers of Gee's Bend. Thanks so much for joining me today on Arch Life's virtual studios. I hope you had a good time creating with me. Here's my finished quilt collage. Yours definitely looks different because you chose to use different papers and you had different ideas. But just like the quilts of Gee's Bend, every work of art is unique and special. And however yours looks, it's just exactly perfect. If you'd like to show us what you made today, we'd love to see it. Please post a photo in the comments below. And remember, art is for everyone.